When we had Marilyn Robinson here recently, she talked about, or maybe she just talked about this with me, I'm not sure, but I've since read it, she's said this in interviews. She came down very hard on the idea that you could be spiritual without being religious.
Yeah.
Have you read her on this? You had her on your show.
I talked to her together with a physicist, which was great.
Yeah, Marcella Gleiser.
Yes.
I loved that.
Yes, yeah.
Who has this wonderful line from one of his books that he thinks that to exist is too strong a word for the electron, which is great.
Yeah.
Because we don't actually see them. You know, we measure their trait. It's great.
Yeah.
Great. But I wonder how you respond to that. She thinks, Marilyn says that she says it's just, I mean, she can be quite harsh. She says it's just fundamentally unserious to call yourself spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
I wonder how you respond.
Well, you know, how I would respond today is very different from how I would have responded 10 years ago or when I was at YDS. I am hesitant to dismiss the way anyone describes their spiritual life. I also think that all the language around this part of life, you know, the word spirituality, faith, religion, I think those things have as many meanings as there are human beings. Mm-hmm. When you and I spoke, I talk to people these days, like a Unitarian Universalist chaplain or scientists who say to me that they're religious and not spiritual. I actually think that's the next wave. I actually think spiritual and not, I think we've already overtaken that.
Well, that's Freeman Dyson. That's essentially what he said, right?
Yeah. But for Kate Braystrup, so it can be non-theists who say that, and it can also be for her, for this Unitarian Universalist chaplain, it is that everything she knows about God is the only thing she feels she can know about God is what happens between human beings. Like, that's what she means by that. So there can be a lot of nuance to it. I think that we are living in a fascinating time where we in this culture, we are some of the first generations of humans who don't inherit a religious identity like we inherit eye color and, you know, the town we grew up in. And we are both free and burdened with the possibility of creating our own spiritual lives. I mean, even when people stay in the tradition that their families had, they choose to stay. It's a choice. You and I talked about that a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And that is a fascinating, and I think something that will be good for a religious institution and tradition, but it's also very unsettling at the same time, just as all the things in our world around technology that are unsettling every other institution are imploding our religious institutions. And it actually turns out that it's not anywhere in the Bible that church is supposed to be 10 a.m. Sunday morning. So even structural things like that may not last, right? But I see so much, all the categories we use are kind of missing the mark. Right now the big thing, and there's a new Pew poll today, I think, about the non-religious young, and you know, the nuns, the N-O-N-E-S, or the new, which I call the new non-religious, that 30% of people under 30 describe themselves as nun when asked with their religious affiliation. But I see in that, I mean, that is a generation of people, maybe some people in this room, who were raised with this toxic public religiosity that they will not tolerate. But I find so many of them are ethically engaged, theologically curious, and I feel like there's something happening around the edges of organized religion, which is very much like, which is our analog to what happened around the edges of organized religion with the rise of monasticism. You know? Kind of leaving the tradition, but possibly, I mean, I think about Bonhoeffer a lot and the idea of religionless Christianity. For very different reasons, we have a lot of religionless religion now. And I do believe that 100 years from now, you know, we may look back and see that in this phenomenon that we call the nuns was actually the renewal. The people who questioned and drove our traditions back to their own heart.